Hello, everyone, and this is Sunday the 13th, December the 13th, and the virus is just charging ahead like it never has before, and we're shut down again, and when you drive around, the roads are pretty well clear. Just a really unusual, strange time that we live in. And the question, of course, is how do we retain a positive thinking? How do we keep our minds thinking in a way that we've got some hope? If we kind of pretend like nothing is going wrong and just imagine that everything is perfect, do we fit into what people say are about religious folks where they have their minds away from the reality of the world in which they live? High-level spiritual people like Jesus and Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and others, somehow, besides were in the midst of the circumstances and situations they were in, they kept having a vision that had them rise up over the circumstances and conditions of their environment. I wouldn't call them people who kind of escaped reality. In fact, we could transcend things in our minds right smack in the middle of reality. We don't escape and detach. We have this high level faith that things are going to be okay, right smack in the middle of when it's not okay. And it's not okay right now. In our personal lives, how this affects our families, how it relates to everything we're doing. There's not a whole lot that's okay if we talk about normalcy. When we think of meditation, we think of going into a place where there's calmness. I often think when I think of my mind is there are different rooms in our minds, and we can kind of choose which room we want to go into. And there are upset rooms and calm rooms. There are places where there's a lot of activity and places where there's not much going on. And we can choose which rooms we want to go into. Our minds keep us stirred up if we have our thinking in the wrong room. We used to have a pool, and probably would never have another one. It was an interesting experience. We had a pool where we had beautiful landscaping, we had trees and flowers and shrubs, and I would have everything showroom perfect, and the kids would invite their friends over. And in a matter of minutes, water would be everywhere, balls would be in the flower beds, the furniture would be moved all around, and some of the clothes they weren't wearing were lying around on the pool sides. So we can think of calmness, but it doesn't take a whole lot to mix it up. You can see a very calm pool, and then somebody can do a belly flop in it or a cannonball. Even when we visited really calm, beautiful lakes, what is it in us that wants to pick up a rock and throw it out in the middle and see a splash? or see how many times we can get a rock to skip. There are contests, skipping rock contests. But every skip causes a ruffle in the water, and it's not near as calm. There are things all the time trying to ruffle up our calmness. Many times we go in to meditate and pray, and it seems like there are ripples, that somebody plops a rock right smack into our meditation time. But that's a part of how we learn how to transcend and rise above the things that are going on around us. Now, what really disturbs us is things that we think are going on that we think are very bad. The consequences are so terrible on people, individuals and groups. And we say, how can we feel good about a person who's doing this kind of thing? Or the people that are part of this kind of disruption? There's only one way that I've found that I can do it. Is to visualize them somehow realizing what they're doing and coming to a point where they change and begin to do it differently. When I was working for probation, and even related to a lot of the counseling, there were people who did some awful things. We call it a conversion, where all of a sudden you confront yourself and say, whoa, this is not who I want to be, not what I want to do. Sometimes someone loses their family, loses a marriage that matters to them, or whatever before they reach that point. But there are people who have not been good people, who have changed, and all of a sudden are starting to do good. What if we see every person, we don't like what they're doing, from the potential that maybe they can change? There are some we can't imagine they could, but they can. And you know, in the thinking of new thought, every person has this gold part in them that is good in them. And there's a lot of dross that's going to have to be burned off, and a lot of it's burned off by trials and struggles in life. But most believe inside of every person is this gold. This little bit of gold is good. And we need to see this in every person that we see. And when you do that, then some of those that seem so bad that you're so upset with, you can maybe see them as if they would change. That goes from the president all the way through everybody we know. That there's occasions where somebody says, hey, that's not the way I need to be. And we look forward to those times. So as we move in to try to calm our minds, they have to be calmed by what we believe can happen and will somewhere along the line happen. Right now, it doesn't seem like some things are ever going to change, but they are going to change. God is going to bring everything to some kind of a perfect conclusion somewhere along the line. And we're a part of that happening. And the only ones we can really be in charge of right now, related to any of this, is ourselves. We are our best challenge, and we are able to have total control of ourselves in the challenge that we've undertaken. We will become the persons that God wants us to be. And we will help the world that we're around experience someone that knows how to love and accept, forgive, and be patient. We are those qualities, and God shows up in us as we be that. So can we have peace in our minds through all this? Yes. It's not normal to have it, but we rise above it because we look at things like God does. And so it is, and thank God.
This church is like a tree standing in the rain, and every branch takes the sap of life, sends it back again. Well, you cut a little here, and you cut a little there, and before you know, when the cold wind blows, our trees a little bare. Oh, the COT, the most beautiful branches you'll ever see. If those branches all fall down, the whole darn tree's gonna hit the ground. This church is like a ship, sailing proud and strong, and every sail on that mighty ship helps to carry it along. When the sea begins to pitch and the storm begins to brew, in the strongest gale it takes every sail to pull that schooner through. Oh, the COT, most colorful ship on the deep blue sea. If our sails come crashing in, everyone in the boat better learn to swim. This church is like a train traveling down the track, and if one car starts to rattle and roll, the next one's got its back. If we keep it on the rails with the blood, the toil, and the grease, we're gonna go where we wanna go, and we'll get there in one piece. Oh, the COT, we're riding the rails up in Pasadena. If us cars don't turn around, we'll be chugga, glory bound. The COT, the most colorful ship on the deep blue sea. And if our sails come crashing in, everyone in the boat better learn to swim. The COT, most beautiful branches you'll ever see. If those branches all fall down, the whole darn tree's gonna hit the ground.